8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the show again. Alright, so we're going to be talking about mental well-being, health and well-being. So I don't know if you have ever experienced a mental health issue, or like a challenge to your mind or anything. It could be anything, from like being stressed about like a maths test, or to like having anxiety, which can show up in different ways, or being depressed, which also has a spectrum, like clinical depression and stuff, to the more extreme stuff, like identity disorders and the spectrum for mental distortions and psychosis, which I would probably say is the furthest you can go, really. Once you hit psychosis, it's just mad. So what you want to do is you want to just seek out help, and just depending on where you are on the spectrum. I mean, if you're stressed about a math test, it's probably a learning issue. What I loved about school when I was at school is that we learned a lot. We learned a lot about independent learning, being able to determine your own pace. So learning how to learn. And I think we looked at things like the difference between kinesthetic learners, what do they call it? Auditory learners, visual learners. So there's people who learn by doing, which is kinesthetic. And there are people who learn by listening, auditory. And there are people who learn by watching, seeing. What you want to do is you want to determine what your way of learning is, and then you want to create a timetable and a plan that caters to the way you learn. Another thing is, if you feel like that feels like way too much, and you feel like, okay, I just don't have time to start evaluating how I learn and creating this proverbial timetable. I know what it feels like to not feel like you've got time or energy, for that matter, and not be able to explain, your situation. Some people will call you quote unquote lazy, right? But really, what you want to do is you can do several things. If it's really bad and you feel like it has something to do with how you learn, or there's some sort of learning difficulty, you can consult a GP or psychiatrist, and they could give you medication like Ritalin for your attention, so you're more focused. But if it's a lighter problem and it's a learning issue but you just don't have time, you can hire a tutor who can if you've got the funds for it, you could hire a more advanced tutor that can talk you through the whole learning process. One of the best places or sources of tutors, believe it or not, people don't realize is your own school. Like, what teacher could you pay outside of your learning hours to tutor you personally at home? They're allowed to do that, I think, mostly. You'd have to check with them, but I'm pretty sure they can tutor you at home if you pay them, or at least they could signpost you to somebody who could help, who could tutor you and help you with the learning material. If you can't afford a tutor, or you think it's not going to work for me, you could seek help from your teachers and ask them to help you come up with this plan, extra time around lunchtime, and you can ask your tutors to help you come up with, do an evaluation. I used to get a lot of these reports about my learning style and how I was doing. And you're supposed to have that anyway at PTA meetings, with like your parents, and your parents and your tutor you could sit down with your parents, and they could hold you accountable if you feel like that's something that you need, and you could you could create a timetable with them, and come up with a reward system. Because what I've noticed about like this stuff is really just the lack of reward that drives a lack of ambition. If you keep doing something, right, and no matter how hard you work, you don't see any reward from it, you don't see any recognition, or you don't just experience, some people, and we're not talking about like getting an award, even though it would be nice, but we're just talking about getting a handshake from your parents, for example, having a party when you like get an A, a party when you graduate, your graduation party, something that says, okay, this was a milestone in my life and I've just overcome that milestone. Now I'm going to move on to the next stage in my life. Something that recognizes that you worked hard in that season, and that now you're on to the next season. So, and then that something that changes your focus onto the next thing in your life. And funnily enough, I'm mentioning this, but this is usually the greatest cause for depression and mental health issues, is this lack of progression or progress in your life. If you find a lot of people who struggle in that way have issues with isolation or a lack of community, and that's why, like, a lot of the time, even I think even advisors or mental health assistants or nurses will like try and change the person's perspective from like looking inward to looking outward in ways that they can like connect a bit more with the community. So like recreational activities, get more involved with like volunteer work, something that gets you out of your head and into the world, whatever world you're in. And if you feel like, okay, my world it's a limited version of what I want, or maybe you feel like you haven't hit your goals, or you're stuck somewhere that you just don't like, you can change your environment, you can change your view, you can change how you think about where you are. There's some people who feel like mentally claustrophobic, meaning that they feel locked in their heads or locked in themselves, and their environment does not help. So they feel restricted, like the physical barriers. In that case, just try and like make the most of where you are. Me personally, I've been on medication, like mental health medication, because I was just the sense that my world was getting tighter and closed in on me, was like getting to me. What's difficult is when you struggle that way, but because you're on a medication, you can't reach out. So the funny thing about like that kind of medication is, in your head everything is okay, but actually in reality your world, you're not aware of the bad things that are happening around you. So it's almost like you're smiling at bad things happening, or it's like the person who goes dancing at a funeral, sort of thing. So the problem with being on medication is sometimes depression is good for you because it gets you to evaluate where you are. So somebody who's in like a really bad place, a trafficking position or drug addict, or and they're crying and they need help, I wouldn't recommend for them to get on medication until they've like left. I'm not making any I'm not giving out any medical advice or anything. I'm not a doctor, so please do not sue me. But what I'm trying to say is, it can work backwards as well. So what you want to do is you want to embrace the pain that you're going through, and use it as a stepping stone or just something that shows you where you are. It's a signpost. It shows you what's wrong with your world. It shows you what isn't working, and it allows you to change, or it allows you to evaluate. Sometimes, like, people in abusive situations accept that sort of thing. So somebody's getting hurt emotionally or physically in the environment, but because somehow maybe they've been asked to internalize some sort of, usually they're controlled by some kind of manipulative traffic or something. And there's always that kind of like narrative that tells you if you feel bad, then you are a bad person, or you don't deserve this, or you don't deserve that. And it's a continuous narrative by like an abusive personality. Sometimes it's on a wider scale, so it can be difficult for that kind of person to find freedom because they've been it's ongoing. They've been squeezed, sort of like like the walls are closing in on you. You know what I mean? So it can be super difficult. What you really want to do is embrace that pain and like use it as, like fight or flight response to help you change your world. So I feel like the worst thing that could happen to a person is for them to be in danger and not be able to help themselves because they can't see, feel, or hear the danger that they're in. All they can do is guess at where they might be at any point. And living like that every day, or feeling like you live like that every day, can be super exhausting and maddening. And I personally know some people who live their lives like that every single day, and sometimes there is no acknowledgement of it. There isn't any there isn't anyone out there that they can reach out to that could be like, we understand your situation, we're gonna change it, or we're gonna do that. Nothing like that. So in that case, the person really has to dig deep to bring them their own authentic self out, so they can be their own hero. Because sometimes it's just their situation where nobody else is coming to save you. You're alone. You're against this sort of I don't know, you can call it, this environment, and you just have to find your own inner strength and inner power to be able to escape. I really hope that helped. I'm just saying this because it's I know sometimes it's easier to comment on that, like on somebody else's actions, and be like, oh, if I was her, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't be that way, or I wouldn't allow that to happen to my kids, or I wouldn't allow that to happen to my husband. It's easier when you're not the victim and you're in a victorious place. So I want to recognize the heroes that have to suffer through this every day.